that he was told not to do it, right? And so you have this stress thing, and then it's eating you up. And on your computer, you open too many tabs, right? And then you tell the children to close some of the tabs, otherwise the computer will run slower and slower. Except you yourself, you're running so many tabs that you don't know it, right? And that is why you're getting a little bit sharper, right? That is why when you talk to the children, there's a little bit of a bite in it, right? That is why you look at them, and then so in West Africa, they have this thing where your family would make fun of you, right? So like it'll be your mother, it'll be your uncle, it'll be your grandfather, and they would say, oh, look at that thing, like he walks like he's top heavy, and then they'll call you top heavy for a while, right? Because maybe you kind of like wobble when you walk. Anyway, all those things begin to creep in. Why? Because you become a little bit cynical, I think, and you look at a child and you begin to understand a little bit of it, that it's all a game. I think that if we push through that thing that makes us want to ridicule children and poke fun at them and sometimes tease them and make them cry, I know they will tease you until you would cry. You won't believe it, but I don't know whether this is also something, right? This is another thing that trying to find yourself in the world does for you, right? When I was very young, I don't know, I must have been 10 years old, there was a song that would make me cry, right? And I had a cousin who would always play that song or sing it around me, right? And apparently, it was, what do I mean apparently? It was so triggering at a point that he could make me cry from singing that song, right? I don't know whether anybody has had that experience, right? It's not just that it was a worm stuck in your ear or anything. The tune it unlocked sorrow in me, And what do you do with the stress? How do you close out of an application, right? You cannot get up and say, oh, you know what, my friend, the one that I really care about, the coworker who is having trouble in his marriage, who is always hinting at things that make me feel like he's going to end it, right? That, you know what, that's just the world now, dude. Just deal with it. You might tell yourself that. But if you tell yourself that soon enough, you're going to find yourself drinking more scotch than you used to after work, right? That's because you care about them. And the burden of that care needs to be dissipated. And scotch is what is doing it for you now, right? Depending on how lucky you are. It could be some woman, right, who makes the world feel lighter. It's the same thing. You have installed this application, you have installed care, right? And now you need to nurse it. Now, from what much I read and come to understand about yoga, right, the goal is that there are two ways of approaching this problem. You can wrestle the mind until at any one point in time it becomes like a trained dog, and when it gets ornery and it wants to always think about the thing that you don't want to think about, it wants to always go the place where you don't want it to go, that through a system of physical restraint, right, you sit a certain way and you breathe a certain way, because it turns out that again, this is for anybody who finds all of these references useful. It turns out that you are like, extending the computer analogy, you can run a debugger on yourself, right? That you can attach a process to how you are operating in the world, so that at any one point in time you can check into how you yourself is doing. Like right now, I am making this video, but at the same time, I can invoke a process which is a debugger, which is checking what I'm about to say next, right? So that I'm coherent and my story packs together. And you will see that at any point in time, when I lose connection with that debugger, or when I think that I'm losing my plot, I'll check with the debugger, and then it'll tell me that, oh, you're still telling the story of why, right? That's all meditation is. It's a place where you return to remind yourself that you're still yourself. Because if you're not careful, the world runs you on mommy mode, right? Until there's no more mommy left in you. Like all your mommy is finished. If somebody says another mother again, they will get murder back, because there's no mother left. There's just murder left, or father left. I know these things because I have touched what it's like to go knocking on the doors of love when it is locked and bolted. And the thing that snarls back, it's ugly. It's ugly because it's run out of love. There's no so in software, I think that you get a card if you're a process who wants to run if you're an application, a process who wants to run on the kernel, you go and wait at a door, and then you say knock knock, and then you say, what do you want? And then you say, I need 2 doses of love. And then the processor says to you, okay, 2 doses of love. Wait a minute, when I have exactly 2 doses, a slot that fits 2 doses of love, I will give it to you. And then maybe you come back and you say, if you don't have a slot for a 2 full dose, I'm so desperate for love that I'll take 1 dose of love. And then the kernel will check, and then it will find a 1 dose love slot, and then it will slide you in there. And then you can just run 1 cycle of love, right? And you get a little bit of love, and then you come back and then you wait again for others to go, right? That is essentially what your computer is doing. And I think that if our bodies are doing something similar, then every time you think about that one child whose grades are not keeping up with his peers, right? Oh, that's your one sister who was at the party last year with that guy who rides the motorcycle, whose hair looked funny. Like his whole person smelled funny too. And he was like, like, dude, like, I'm totally like in shape and like aligned with the chakras, and you're thinking to yourself, like, why does she keep picking the losers, right? And then I check with my debugger, and I realize that I'm trying to see whether we can use an understanding of cognitive neuroscience. What is cognitive neuroscience? How cognition interacts with neuroscience? Or does that just sound smart? Because I feel like I've heard it so much, right? How we cognize, right? How we recognize, how we cognize, how we think, and how the brain looks like when we're thinking. Yeah, I think that is the thing that I'm trying to unpack. What does how we think and the things we think about have to do with what the brain looks like when we're thinking? Because the promise is that if we can get the signature of what the brain looks like when we are thinking our happiest thoughts, then we can stamp that signature onto the mind by mapping it onto a drug, say a psychotropic, that shifts the mind into that sphere, right, that boundary, or in some cases religious practice, religious ecstasy, that shifts the mind into that place, or music, right? I was listening to the interview is this professor from Stanford, just extraordinary virtuoso pianist who is also a scientist of sound and acoustics and the physics of hearing and reverberation. And I don't even know what it's like to be a human being like that, but may she be reborn so that more people will see what it's like to see something like a superhuman. But so the thing is that now you have these processes running, and the only thing we have right now are practices that have been established for a long time. Practicing a religion, whatever it is for you, Islam, Catholicism, Buddhism, practice a religion that allows you to inhibit some of that insanity, some of the inner chimpanzee, because the inner chimpanzee is always going to be there, right? And is going to, until it has understood, is going to want the three things that it's always wanted. We see it everywhere, right? It's boring. If you're 16 and if anybody promises you these things, it's the same old stuff. It's boring, right? It's going to promise power. It's going to promise it's going to promise sex, and it's going to promise the temptations of Jesus, right? Power, satiety, some kind of satisfaction of the inner animal, right? And I don't know if you're amenable to it, some maybe influence. Yeah, and it's going to make you those promises.